privilege to welcome Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, Ashok Chakra. Sir, thank you very much for joining us. And as usual, whenever we see you with that smile, you light up the whole screen. Ramu sir is so happy seeing you, and he sent me some pictures as well. And we have Muff as well here. So we are all old colleagues from the Aircraft and Systems Testing Establishment, which is our alma mater. Ricky sir and I, and our families, we know each other for, I think, more than 25 years. I haven't seen a better human being. A human being so fully rounded, distinguished gentleman, a thorough professional, who always puts the nation first. I think our nation couldn't have chosen a better person to represent us as the first astronaut in space. I mean, it has been our privilege, both our families, to know Ricky sir. And also his children. And as you all know, Ricky sir and his very talented wife Madhu, they live in Kotagiri in the Nilgiris, and their two children are, as usual, as talented as him. Before I hand over to the secretary to introduce Ricky sir, I just want to show a few pictures. Okay. Right. Right. This is, of course, we have our 4 flags here. Basically, we represent all the 3 services. After Ricky sir went into space, he came back to his alma mater in the Aircraft and Systems Testing Establishment. And you can see Air Commodore Ramachandran, who just spoke to us. He retired as the Vice Chief of Air Staff. He was the Commandant of the AST. And you can see Ricky sir addressing all the personnel of AST, and along with him, Group Captain Ravish Malhotra, who was his standby to go to space. And all 3 of them in this picture are, the alma mater is the ASTE. And this is the memento which went into space, and he presented to AST. It has pride of place in the museum of AST anytime you visit. And you can see Ricky sir, smart and handsome. This is something which my family treasures, and we are both from the same, Ricky sir and I are from the same squadron, one squadron, and he presented us to the family. So I treasure it. It was meant for the kids, but I haven't given it to the kids as yet. And here is a post which went into space and came back, another treasure in our home. I won't take any more of the time, and I will hand over to, wait a minute. Okay. I'm not able to stop sharing. Just a moment. Ravi?
Close that window.
Okay. Yes, Harsha, you can take over, please. I hand over to Harsha, who will introduce Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, and then we will hand over to Ricky sir for his talk.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this talk show, fortnightly talk show of the AFUA. And this is something which we started at the start of the lockdown. And today is the 16th talk show that AFUA is hosting. And it's our privilege to have Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma as our guest speaker for the day. Before I hand over the proceedings to Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, a small introduction about him. Not that he requires it, but then that's as part of our formalities. Okay. Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, Ashok Chakra. Rakesh Sharma graduated from the National Defense Academy in December 1968 and joined the Indian Air Force as a fighter pilot. He flew 21 operational missions on a MiG-21 aircraft during the Indo-Pak War in 1971. In 1975, he was selected to undergo the test pilots course at the Test Pilot School of the Indian Air Force's Aircraft System Testing Establishment at Bangalore. He served as an Air Force test pilot for 15 years before being seconded to the industry in 1987. During his Air Force career, he was selected for the joint Indo-Soviet Space Mission 1984, which culminated in an 8-day near-Earth orbit space flight. He was awarded the Ashok Chakra by the government of India. He was also awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union and the Order of the Lenin by the erstwhile Soviet government. After the space flight, he returned to his test flying career and served as the chief project pilot of Tejas, India's light combat aircraft. Later, as the chief test pilot of the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, he worked on the indigenous intermediate jet trainer project. In a flying career spanning 33 years, he spent 24 years testing aircraft, weapons, and systems. During this period, he flew 4,000 hours on all frontline fighter aircraft of the Indian Air Force before retiring from test flying in July 2001. Thereafter, he joined the IT industry in 2001 and headed the Indian Aerospace and Defense Studies Business Unit of the Parametric Technology Corporation, USA. Later, he took over as the chairman of the board of Candela Labs, an IT company located at Bangalore, till he finally called it a day in 2019. With that, sir, I hand over the proceedings to you. And ladies and gentlemen, we will have a question and answer session at the end of Wg Rakesh Sharma's talk. All those who wish to ask a question, I kindly put them in the chat box or kindly raise your hands during the session. Until end of Wg Rakesh Sharma's talk, I kindly request you all once again to mute yourself. Thank you. With that, sir, it's all yours.
Thanks. Harsha, before you leave, during my presentation, I will need to share my screen. So I would request Ravi or yourself to make me a co-host during my delivery.
We'll do it right away, sir. Varta, sir, you're doing it?
I'll handle that.
Okay, Ravi, you can make sir the co-host.
Okay. Air Marshal Varthaman, President AFVOA, firstly, thank you very much for your kind words. I wish my wife was here to hear that. it would have helped my passage. So, fellow veterans, I really thank you for the invitation which you guys have extended to me, and for giving me a platform to actually share some of my views with you all. But first, I wish to pay my respects to my seniors in the audience, notably your patron, General Rao. I'm not sure if he's tuned in, and Air Marshal Ramachandran, under whom I've had the privilege of serving on 3 different occasions. And my salutations also to other colleagues like myself who have tuned in this morning. As for my views regarding the future trajectory of space exploration, I must confess right now that they may strike you all as utopian, far out, and somewhat impractical. But it shall be my attempt to nudge you all to at least ponder on whether we need the suggested change to happen, or do we continue to remain trapped in the cycle of human conflict that we have been prisoners of, I would say, for centuries now. But before I sail into the future, I wish to just briefly touch upon the Gaganyan project ISRO is currently busy in. Now, these are early days, and the first flight for that project is some distance away. But the best I can do is to share some slides that will give you an overview of the training on how it is done and why it is done so. Before I venture out to predict where space exploration is likely to go, and more importantly, in my opinion, where it ought to be going, I must confess beforehand that I am unaware of the changes that may have taken place in the training regimen since I trained 37 years ago for the space flight. But I'm guessing that not much may have changed, because the human body has not changed fundamentally in the interim. And the training essentially has always been designed to train the human body to adapt and withstand the rigors of spaceflight. So if you just give me a minute, I will now switch the screen and share these slides with you. We are looking at Gaganyan and beyond. And I must tell you that the way I've structured this particular presentation is that the first half, and a smaller half, I will be devoting to the training for Gaganyan and taking you through the how and why of that training. And then we'll talk about going beyond Gaganyan. We'll talk about the future of space exploration. So, and that's how I arranged the slides. So we'll be going forward and back, and you'll see me fill in the details, and you can see me talk during those periods when I'm not sharing the screen. So the first thing is, which is different and one has to get used to, is the G forces. Now, all military aviators, and there are many amongst the audience, will be very familiar about G forces, but there is a slight difference here. When in a fighter aeroplane, when you turn, the G forces do not last for very long, because the energy cannot be sustained for that long during a particular maneuver. Whereas during the launch sequence, from 0 to about 7.5 kilometers per second, the acceleration is quite a bit and sustained. So within about 8 minutes, you go from 0 to 7.5 kilometers per second. Therefore, you're always under G forces. Now, the effect for that is that you're lying down on your back because you're limiting the blood flow from reaching the lower extremities, and that increases your G threshold a wee bit. But throughout the acceleration, the rib cage presses against the spine, and the chest cavity, there's not enough place for the lungs to expand while you breathe. So you've got to train to breathe under the condition of G forces for about 8 minutes or plus. So that training is imparted to you in the centrifuge. And this is where the trainee cosmonauts are seated. This is a long mechanical arm. And this over here is the pivot. And this whole place is huge, absolutely. So the RPM doesn't have to be very much as it keeps going round and round. So that is the G force training, which is imparted in the centrifuge. Next is vestibular training. And this slide shows Air Commodore Malhotra seated in this torture chamber.
Rakesh sir, can you do this share screen, sir? We're not able to see the slide.
Oh, don't tell me. Oh my, okay. I thought I did share the screen. Just one sec. My apologies. One sec. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir. We can see, sir. We can see.
Okay. So I'll quickly go back. But anyway, you've been hearing that, except for the centrifuge. Okay, this was the centrifuge slide. Okay. And this was the long arm I was talking about. And but you've heard the narrative, why we did this training. Next is, we were on this slide, which shows Air Commodore Malhotra on the vestibular chair. This is a chair which rotates around its axis. And while the chair is going around, the trainee is required to move the head forward and back, right to left, and side to side. He does that because in turn, the mutually perpendicular semicircular canals in the middle ear, they get conditioned to replicate the same kind of situation as would occur in zero gravity. And the mechanics of that is that on Earth, when you are standing upright, due to the presence of gravity, you're able to, and you need to remain vertical. And if you start tilting, then there is a feedback given by a semicircular canals and you straighten up. But once you're in space where there is no gravity, there is no need really to remain vertical. And why there is no need? Because there is no floor, there is no roof, and you don't fall. I mean, you float. So therefore, your head movements keep happening and the semicircular canals get overactivated, and that sets up as a kind of a, space sickness symptoms start occurring, quite like travel sickness. So that is the kind of training. And just when we thought that, we are quite comfortable in that environment, they mount the chair on a swing. And this is what you see. This is the swing. And then the swing goes forward and back, and the chair is going round and round, and you're required to move your head in all three directions. So that's why we used to call this torture chamber. The next change that happens in zero gravity, and it will continue to happen, is that without gravity, on Earth, the heart is pumping blood up against gravity to the head. Similarly, the blood returning to the heart has to come up against gravity from the lower extremities of the body. But in space, nobody's told the human body that you've changed location. You've gone from 1G to 0G, but the heart is unaware of this fact. So it continues pumping at the old rate. Result, that there is too much fluid, blood, which is collected in the head, and the blood returns also faster to the heart. So generally, hemodynamically, you're a bit unstable. Now, as a result of that, there's too much of blood flow, your semicircular canals get gorged and they become oversensitive. So it's the centrifuge training which helps you at that moment, and the still table training. The body gets used to handling the extra volume and flow of blood in the upper extremities. So this is the tilt table training. Zero gravity training, again, quite impossible on Earth, because you can't really replicate it for longer than about 30 seconds or 25 seconds or so. And this training is imparted in an IL-76 kind of an aeroplane, which is padded up from the inside. An aircraft is made to go through a series of dives and pull-ups. And after each pull-up, the autopilot pitches it nose down, following an arc. And during that passage, 25 seconds of exact zero gravity exists within that aeroplane. So although it is not enough for you to train, but it gives you a sneak peek at the challenges which will be there, because you're flying around, you're changing clothes, and you're getting into your overall, and the leg is going one side, you are going the other side. So this lets you know what to expect. A lot of work in the simulator, and this is the simulator you can see through the window, where you practice the procedures for launch, for establishing orbit, for docking with the laboratory, for undocking, for starting the retro burn, for returning back to Earth. And these are the procedures you do. And while you are doing that, these are the guys, instructors who merrily keep punching these red buttons over here, and they feed in emergencies, sometimes smoke, and then see how the crew cooperates with each other, sorts out the problem, understands it, and the crew reaction is gauged on a bank of TV monitors, which are right on top. So a lot of simulator work was also done. Then each of these seats is custom built, and contours of your form are taken, captured, and as you can see over here, a foam cushion which exactly fits your particular body contours, that is constructed so that each of us has a comfortable seat. Once again, the need for this is that you're going to be under G for a long period of time. And if the seat is not comfortable, it cannot be a universal shape, because then you're going to have very painful extremities at the end of that 8.5-minute ascent. The launcher is moved towards the launch pad. If you look at these 4 clusters of 4 exhausts on the side and this cluster of 4 exhausts in the middle, this constitutes the first stage, and this is the second stage. At launch, first and second stages light up together, and they start propelling the launcher upwards. And as and when these solid rocket boosters expend themselves, they are jettisoned because you don't want to carry the extra weight. Once you have reached the launch pad, this whole contraption is stood up on its bottom end. And if you, I invite your attention to this area. This needle-like structure is what is the emergency extraction rocket in case, and this is what we saw ourselves in December, about 3 months before my own launch. There was a launcher which was ready on the pad with the 2 cosmonauts seated somewhere here. And the whole launcher blew up because of a fuel leak, and they cut the feed, but this extractor moved the capsule out, took it about to a height of 1 kilometer away from the conflagration, and the rest of the return sequence with the parachute, etc., worked beautifully. So that was comforting to see that the escape system works. So on the day of the launch, ours was an evening launch, night launch. The whole launcher is placed on hydraulic arms, and when lift exceeds weight, the launcher goes up and these hydraulic arms spring out and you're on your own. The control system is fighting to maintain the local vertical, and the journey has started. Acceleration begins, G-forces start building up, and by now you're probably at 2 to 3 Gs. You go through the cloud layer which was there, and you've already trained to withstand those G-forces and its constant build-up, and there you are. You're well on your way. The G-forces are ratcheted up to about 3.5 Gs, and that's where it will stay till you reach orbit. So about the first thing everybody does after reaching orbit is to look out for one's own country, and this is the beautiful sight one could get to see. In our case, because we were lower, this is a snapshot taken from geostationary, but we were lower, so our field of view was restricted by the porthole, by the window. So at a time, one could say get to see about this much, including, of course, Sri Lanka. And from the left window, you could see this part. From the right window, you could see this part of the globe. So this is how it was. So this really was the, I would say, the training which we did for 18 months for a mere 8-day flight. And now, if we put that aside and move over to the future of Gaganyan and beyond, I would like to share how I have structured the rest of my talk. We will look at the future of space exploration, and the drivers for that would be the innate urge in all of us. It's in our DNA to explore. If there's something to be explored, we'll go ahead and explore it. That's who we have been, and that's who we will remain to be. And reasons for that would be that there is need for a search for resources to fuel the global economy, and I'll cover it during the rest of my talk. And we are facing the environmental degradation of planet Earth. So it's a survivability issue for our species. And if at this stage, I will temporarily stop sharing the screen, and I will go on to the rest of my talk, where I will attempt to predict not only where space exploration is heading, but also where it ought to be heading, in my opinion. So let us begin first by evaluating, say, the future of our home planet, which is Earth. The prognosis is really not good. There is hunger, there's pollution, there's unemployment, climate change. And when you look around, there's social unrest going on in Hong Kong, Paris, Moscow, Indonesia, Egypt, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria. And moreover, we are moving towards a waterless world. And while at the same time, we face a very serious energy deficit. So this leads us to the conclusion that the Earth is terminally ill and suffering from a very severe case of non-sustainable development. The finite non-renewable resources of the Earth are being frittered away at a very alarming rate by developing societies. Now, Earth actually is the only place which is capable of nurturing human life, at least till as far as the eye can see. So when I say eye, I include the Hubble telescope in it. So when we turn back the pages of history, we have seen that conflicts around the world in the past took place due to the inequitable distribution of wealth that was created by a few who took control of the finite resources which are available. Now, this wealth was generated by monetizing these resources after the powerful dispossessed the weak who initially had owned these resources. So our energy consumption rate is going up exponentially on the one hand, and it does not take a rocket scientist to see that if we are to continue living on this planet, we need to find alternative energy sources. Well, we need to find them either here on Earth or trawl for it in space. In fact, the current state of the Earth, in my opinion, has kind of catalyzed efforts to first explore, then inhabit, and inevitably thereafter exploit. Initially the Moon, and later Mars. Further, perhaps, after that. So now this effort has now become crucial to the survival of the human race on planet Earth. The driving force in future for space exploration is more survival and less science. So don't be surprised that this is what will happen on the Moon after we inhabit it. After we inhabit it and carve out national boundaries, as we have done in Antarctica, what happens next? Space exploration has never come cheap. It has become even more expensive now. Government funding has started drying up. The governments find that there are more pressing and politically expedient allocations that need to be made by the government of the day, wherever they may be. So today, as the frequency of launches increase and technological challenges need to be addressed, we need to make some changes to the funding models. It has become necessary. The private sector is making an entry, and the private sector has been playing an increasingly important role. Now, before long, I believe that henceforth, exploration will be done by nations, but exploitation of space resources will shift to the private sector. Given this background, we can expect that going forward, all investments by the private sector will have to be measured against the return on investment yardstick. So more the investment, more the activity in space, more R&D, innovation, more materials production for use back on Earth, more the profits, more the protectionism in terms of the markets which have been so created, more the conflicts arising out of these monopolistic activities. In short, business as usual. Except that this is a niche activity and only niche players will derive benefit from this activity. So resources will be found in space, they'll be transported back to Earth for the exclusive use of only their own countrymen. In case of government-funded projects or private sector shareholders, this will be and continue to be the infamous exclusive model. I think we need to focus on the immediate impact and the future trajectory of human activity in space, specifically on what the further effects of human activity be in the long term. When the moon is first explored, and subsequently when the moon is exploited as a result of the renewed interest which is being shown by current spacefaring nations. The writing on the wall, according to me, is clear now. No single nation individually can afford to master and pay for all the technologies that are required to create a settlement on the moon and then to explore Mars. Again, here, cooperation rather than competition recommends itself. I would say that if each aspiring spacefaring nation decides to develop an independent capability to master these technologies, we will have succeeded only in speeding up the expenditure of the Earth's limited non-renewable resources by manyfold. It makes better sense then to collaborate by leveraging the space technology strengths of different nations. And this will then result, I think, in a cost-effective buildup of capabilities wherever they exist today, and then to utilize it in a collaborative framework to colonize the moon by people from Earth. It will then become a truly cooperative and collaborative venture by the people, for the people of our beautiful planet. And now, if you will let me indulge in some risky crystal ball gazing, I would say that today the world appears safer than it used to be if one considers merely the frequency with which wars now take place. Actually, the reduced frequency is only because wars are bad for business. Well, at least for businesses other than the business of aerospace and defense. So today, as we ready to return to the moon and beyond, the world waits, watching. Will there be a change in our approach, or whether we will choose to follow the exclusive model of wealth sharing, which we have been doing up till now, and therefore the resultant effect would be that we continue to remain prisoners of a violent past as we have been up till now. And this brings me to the central point I wish to make this morning. If we continue to do what we have been doing up till now, then instead of learning from history, we will have chosen to refuse to learn from history. So commencement of this new chapter in space exploration presents us, I think, with an opportunity to script a new future, a future which is fundamentally different to the past that we have been surviving in up till now. There is now, like I said earlier, a renewed interest in space exploration. And this is the first time that humans shall be leaving Earth's orbit with the stated intention of exploring the moon, of colonizing it before they begin to exploit its potential for use back on Earth. When we leave and set up base there, and we set up base later on Mars, should we be going there as we have been doing until now, as Russians, Americans, Europeans, Chinese, and tomorrow after Gaganyan as Indians? Or should we be going out there and later, perhaps millions of kilometers away, as humans from planet Earth? Should we continue to cling to our national identities tomorrow as we travel to Mars and beyond? I think that if we concentrate on achieving merely our narrow national objectives in space exploration without addressing the core strife-causing issues, that of inequitable distribution of finite resources and therefore wealth, we shall merely be replicating our dysfunctional earthly society on celestial colonies we will be establishing in future. In fact, we shall succeed only in exporting the seeds of earthly conflict to outer space. Again, what do we do once we have colonized the moon? It does not make sense to default into the same exclusive wealth distribution model. If we go to the moon and later to Mars and beyond, as people from Earth, we must share the resources which are farmed there with everybody back on Earth. If we do that, we will begin turning back the blood-stained pages of history, page by page, bit by bit. You know, it will be politically challenged to get this model to work. I understand that. Challenging it will also be for the private sector as well. How will they answer their shareholders if they agree to part with profits accruing out of space-related business activity for the benefit of the underdeveloped and developing nations? I believe that this is a step that needs the attention of business leaders and politicians who will be supporting future space activities. Perhaps setting aside a percentage of profits or a percentage of GDP, quite like it is done with the CSR budgets, that would be one way to give back to society and invest in our collective conflict-free future. There is a need to forge a global consensus on this issue. So what should be India's role in reorienting the worldview of nations as is being suggested? This is not going to happen overnight. I admit that. Existing government policy is not going to be trashed in a hurry because of the presence of pressure groups that will be needed to influence not only our government, but other governments too. But change must begin to happen. We would be well advised to start with baby steps. And from other nations, I think it will require leadership of a very high order to forge such a consensus. Today, absolutely everybody is fed up of war, and social unrest is one of the symptoms. I believe that India can play that role. From its inception, India has been running a unique space program. It is the only space program which has had a prime socio-economic focus. ISRO has amply demonstrated how technology can be harnessed for altering the trajectory of people's lives by making available relevant information to the common man, whether it be infotainment, telemedicine, teleeducation, earth resources data for bolstering the national economy, disaster management, etc., etc. ISRO needs to stay the course and lead by example. What ISRO has done for India, India can do for the region by sharing its expertise, by using an inclusive model of sustainable growth in our region. I think it'll be a significant diplomatic outreach. It'll be a proof of concept for the rest of the world to see, if you will, India can wage peace in our region, which is a part of a world which has been torn by war. Plus, India also has a centuries-old philosophical tradition that is found in our ancient text, the Maha Upanishad. It records the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is one family. So today, India's expertise in space sciences is grudgingly being recognized the world over. This gives us an opportunity to influence global policy in a direction that space exploration needs to take in the future. If we take these 2 points together, I think it will give India the moral and the technological clout to influence international space exploration policy. You know, we all work to make this world a better and a safer place for our children. And personally, I'm of the belief that science must be leveraged to provide life-altering solutions that can positively impact the lifestyles and well-being of all who live on planet Earth. This can only be achieved if some checks and controls are put in place so that human activity in space can be regulated, resulting in sustainable exploitation. The model involving the sharing of discovered resources in space back on Earth as a result of future space explorations is a compelling thought that actually needs to be worked on to make it politically acceptable and, I think, economically viable. That's most important, because otherwise it will never be adopted. So these details can be worked out by government reps and business leaders. Only then, I think, we will be able to work towards ensuring, as Professor Yashpal had once expressed the hope, that our common origin should get for all of us a common destiny. I'm suggesting that India, that is ISRO, works towards inclusive and sustainable development on Earth by influencing nations to set up a joint expeditionary task force to form resources in outer space and share the same with other nations back on Earth for the greater good of mankind, so to speak. Now, this is not an implausible dream. In 1997, a UN resolution signed by 97 countries stated that the exploration of outer space shall be carried out for the benefit of all member states, that space shall be the province of all mankind. ISRO can exercise its influence and shape the global space exploration policy along the sentiments that have been expressed in that resolution. I'm suggesting that we work towards building heaven on earth instead of creating another far-off hell on the moon and beyond. So this then is our challenge and also our opportunity. The opportunity to become who we can be. I imagine that I came across as a dreamer, but as John Lennon once sang, I'm not the only one. If there are enough of us, we can and we must, I think, work towards a safer, peaceful existence for generations that will follow us on this, the only home we will ever have. And now, if I may, I would like to go back onto the rest of, just 1 minute, just 1 minute. I've screwed up something. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Right, so now I'm going to go back, just a minute. Where's the, yeah, here you are. So, here we are, and before I let you all go, I wanted to share with you a short 5-minute video, which really, in a way, pictorially depicts what I have been saying all this while. And just a minute. Oh dear. Yeah. So here we go. will settle on the moon. And maybe later Mars. When you then see the various textures, the diversity of our planet, the deserts and the coastlines and hills and the forests, and you begin to realize what a beautiful planet we live on. And then your thoughts then start going towards why do we have to be mired in conflict? And you start thinking about sustainability, because when you look the other way, till as far as the eye can see, you know that there is no other habitable planet quite like planet Earth. The problem with asteroids is that the Earth is rotating around its axis, and we have no idea that if an asteroid comes our way, which is the country that's going to get written off, and the collateral damage and the climate change that's going to occur as a result of that, that is going to affect almost every other country. Some scientists feel that it could be the beginning of another ice age. So for us to secure our future, we will need every country to cooperate. I think we should be open to cooperation between nations, provided it is fair and just. Borders are not visible from space. I think we need to make that work here before we start going and colonizing elsewhere. Otherwise, what we will be doing really is exporting conflict into space. I don't think confrontation is the way forward. Cooperation is. Because we've tried every other ism. We've tried capitalism, we've tried communism, we've tried socialism, we've tried all kinds of religious dogma. Nothing seems to be working. We should try some humanism now. We cannot live a profligate lifestyle, consumptive lifestyle on a planet that has limited resources. Have no doubt, irrespective of what the churn that our country is going through, we are a blessed nation. And the reason for that is, if you look back, give me some explanation as to why so many great minds, so many philosophers, so many saints have taken birth on this land. Why have they parted with their ancient, age-old wisdom so freely? Why have they done that? Why here? Only here. It is because our cultural ethos is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which says the world is one family. And that is why you, I, and the rest of 1.3 billion of us need to be proud that we have taken birth on this land, which is why this land is Sare Jahan Se Acha.
Kisa, you're muted.
Yep. So I'm now ready for question and answers.
Well, Rakesh sir, thank you very much for such a brilliant talk. I mean, literally, you mesmerized us with, your thoughts on the subject and the way you took us through your talk. And if I say one of the takeaways that I would take away from your talk this morning, one is that do the nations need to cling to their national identities and refuse to share the benefits of space exploration? There is a need for nations to collaborate with each other, and that the benefits of space exploration should be shared by all. You also, you know, told us that I think there's a very valid point that there's more need for the private players since the governments do not today have unlimited resources for space exploration. And you also said that India should convince other countries for a joint exploratory task force. Thank you very much, sir. That was really a very wonderful talk by you. And before I throw open the question and answer session to the others, I have two questions for you from my side. One is, how different are the launchers of today compared to your days, sir?
It's a very interesting question. You know, there are.
So can you speak up loudly? Your voice is.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Roger, sir.
Right. So what I was getting at is that there are two approaches. Really speaking, the United States and the development which goes on in that part of the hemisphere is really built on leapfrogging technology. And the way the Russians and the erstwhile Soviets did was that they just built on what works. So essentially today's launcher, which after the space shuttle retired, the Western Hemisphere has also been using only Russian launchers for access to space. And that launcher, really speaking, is the development of the same technology and launcher which Gagarin had used. So the approaches are that what's working, let's improve it so that the reliability factor keeps adding on incrementally. Whereas the Americans would trash something and spend more millions because it's good for their business, I guess. So these are the two different approaches. And apart from this, of course, when innovation has to be done, for example, the idea of the space shuttle was really a very good idea because we do need cheaper access to space. We do need reusability. And those kind of innovations will come from the West. But to make it work on a day-to-day and longer basis, then I think that is where the Russians. What I'm stating really is I'm explaining why it makes sense to collaborate the strengths of various nations.
Right, sir. And my next question is, tell how many days before the actual launch date were you told that it was you who's going into space and not Ravish Malhotra?
Training.
Halfway through the trainings. Okay.
That's
Thank you, sir. Now, there are two questions coming up for you from our viewers on the YouTube. The first one is from Mr. L. Palni Kumar. He says that long duration interplanetary travel and exploration is best done by robotics and AI machines rather than by humans. Your views, please. That's the question from Mr. Palni Kumar.
Well, it is, I think, a compelling thought. In fact, you don't have to go up into space. You look at industry right here on Earth. And that is what is happening. It all depends on how good AI systems will become in the future, whether they will be able to replicate the potential of human decision making, because it will have to be an autonomous methodology. There is no time to consult with the experts back on Earth. There is a massive time delay for questions and answers to happen. So whatever intelligence that is required to meet up with an existential challenge as it may happen, all that knowledge has to be on board. So whether it is with the human or whether it is with a system better than a human, well, that remains to be seen. And I think we just made a beginning. Let's wait and see whether anybody boards an aeroplane which has been flown by robots. And if you start seeing that, then I think there's a good chance for future exploration to be only with robots.
Great, sir. Okay, the next question from one of another YouTube viewer. That is, his name is Siddharth Panda. He says that during your space flight, did you get the opportunity to witness the mesmerizing aurora borealis from the atmosphere of the of a planet?
Yeah, well, no, but I would say that we were captivated, all of us, by something which was even more asked for compelling viewing, and that was watching a sunrise and a sunset from space. In fact, I have a few slides here, thinking that there will be a question like that. And if you want, I can again share the screen and take you through those slides. Would that help? Okay. So here we go. All right. So here, I'm putting the screen again. Here we are. When you're in space, the first inkling you have of the sunrise approaching is your solar. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. The solar sails turn golden because it's picking up the first rays of the sun. And while you're watching, there is this blue arc, which really is the edge of the Earth. And that, while you're watching, slowly starts turning blue against the black vacuum sky. The sky is not blue as observed from orbit. It's all black. And while you are just about digesting that, this is what a sunrise is. It looks like a diamond as it peeps through over the horizon. And before you can say Jack Robinson, this is sunrise. And if you've missed it, no problem. Another 45 minutes, and in reverse, the same drama unfolds, and you watch a sunset. So 45 minutes later, again a sunrise. 45 minutes later, again a sunset. Takes 90 minutes. So this, I think, is a much better spectacle to keep you engrossed.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. Sir, if we can go on to the next question. Captain Sivasalam, sir, has got a question for you, sir. Captain Sivasalam, sir, please ask your question.
Rakesh, hi. You're a great optimist when you talk about humanism and talking about building heaven on earth. We entirely subscribe to your view. But then when you talk later about these two segments, yes, as far as India is concerned, we are more into the explorative rather than the exploitative regime. But after 1997 resolution, is there any regulation or as far as participation in space research and space activities are concerned? Why I'm raising this question is, as far as Antarctica is concerned, yes, there are quite a lot of protocols which all the nations follow. But space, the participation by China, I have a concern. That's why I'm asking this question. Is there any regulation today? Because when we talk about cooperation, when we talk about participation, will it be on the same way we did it in Antarctica as far as space is concerned? What are the regulations? Can you please throw a light on this?
There has, to my knowledge, there has not been any protocol, any agreement which says that Antarctica belongs to humankind. It says space belongs to everybody. and it's not the preserve of any one nation. So there is a distinction being made between Antarctica and space over here. Now, as far as the resolutions go, like I said, there are 97 countries who are signatories to it. But then that begs the question, how effective is the United Nations? All you need is President of the United States, Trump particularly, who comes in and trashes a climate change treaty, which all the nations have for years been slogging over. So the problem really is, it's like what we are undergoing. We've got a book this thick of laws, but where's the enforcement? You know, the enforcement can only happen, and I think the politics can change only when people like you, me, and we are all on the street with the same resolve that we want our future to improve. We don't accept the status quo. And so how do we get the United Nations? How do we give it more teeth? Look at the coronavirus. I mean, the noise that is being generated. Business keeps coming into the way everywhere. And it's the economic model, I think, which is preventing us from realizing our ambitions. So optimists.
Thank you, Rakesh.
Yes, I am an optimist and a dreamer. Yes.
Wing Commander Arulanandam has got a question for you, sir. Wing Commander Arulanandam, sir.
No.
You have no questions. Okay.
No question now.
All right, sir. I'll just go back to the chat box, and there is a question for you from Space Kids. Srimati Kesan. Yes, Srimati, you can ask your question. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning. Good morning. So it was a beautiful presentation as always. And I just would like to know about the anti-missile testing. You know, the anti-missile satellites being tested by all the countries now is getting popular. When we say that, you beautifully presented about humanism and, what are we talking about anti-missiles? I mean, is it a need? Is it a need at this juncture?
Well, it takes just one bad apple for the whole basket to get infected, okay? If there's one country which starts this kind of an activity, and that country has also signed the non-proliferation agreement, but that's who we are. And that's why one is suggesting we go to break out of the cycle, There's no point keep repeating our mistakes. So we got to do things differently. If what we have done up till now is not working, well, let's collectively think about how do we get this to work. Unfortunately, everything is being driven by money, by economics, by business. So really, Stevie, you'll have to co-opt the businesses. And mind you, I have seen a slight shift because when you come to environmental issues, I had gone to address the UN General Assembly for the Environment, and there I was shocked to see that business leaders were there. And I collared one of them and I asked him, tell me, what brings you here? I would have expected people like you to run miles away from these discussions where we are trying to limit effluents which are going into the sea, which is going to push up the cost of your product more and make you less competitive. So what are you here for? So he told me that businesses, the successful ones, have realized that if they do not conform to the greater good of our planet, it is not going to be sustainable even for their businesses. So although they are willing to cooperate, but they are willing to cooperate only so that the gravy train does not get interrupted. That's the problem. So I guess we want to somehow influence the business people that it is good for your business if you reduce conflict on planet Earth. I've already said that wars are less because wars have become bad for business. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Harsha ji, just one question more, can I, with your permission?
Please go ahead and ask the question, Srimati.
Rakeshji, I mean, the video presentation was extremely good. I'd like to share this with a lot of children. So is there anywhere, you have a link or something to that? Because I definitely want children of tomorrow to see this. It's a great source of inspiration and they got a lot of learning to it from that.
Ma'am, the background is that excerpts, the audio bit has been taken by the person who did a podcast with me. The podcast is too long, 1 hour, 20 minutes. And he's taken excerpts from that, patched it with visuals and music, and put it on YouTube. So I can send you the YouTube link.
Okay.
So that's the background. The podcast is too long and it's only audio.
Okay, please, sir. Really appreciate. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So the next question for you is from Group Captain Suresh. He says, sir, can you recount the moment when you immortalize the phrase, Sare Jahan Se Acha?
Well, as a student, Sare Jahan Se Acha was the de facto #2 national anthem. We used to sing it all the time after the national anthem in school. So that really was top of recall. And if one were to go through the words, I think they're tremendously meaningful. And I do believe that it really fits in with the way most of us think, So it resonated with me, the song, and it has been one of my favorites. And I'm so happy to see nowadays that it has been borrowed by the Air Force Band also. And whenever we attend functions of the Indian Air Force, the band strikes up Sare Jahan Se Acha, which is wonderful. So that was top of recall. And truly, India looks beautiful from space. I don't say this because I can explain why I say this. And that is because we've got such a long coastline and, the color contrast is startling. We've got the Ghat section, we've got the greens, we've got the plateaus, which appear brown. We've got the lakes, we've got the rivers, we've got forests, we've got the mountains, we've got deserts which appear golden, and the mountains appear purple with snow-capped peaks. So, and all of this you get to see in such a shot. Africa is also beautiful, I must tell you. South America is beautiful. But none of the leaders of those nations asked me that question. It was my prime minister who asked, how does India look from space? And I said what I truly believed in.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, any more questions from anybody? Yes, Brigadier Sridharan. Brigadier Sridharan, sir, kindly unmute yourself and ask the question, please.
Sir, you're muted.
Sir, you're muted. Sridharan, sir.
I just want to know, what is the time span you get to see India when you're there every revolution?
Well, you don't get to see India on every revolution, sir. What happens is that our orbital path was from southwest to northeast because it was inclined about 57 degrees to the equator. Now, it takes 90 minutes to go around once. But in those 90 minutes, the Earth has shifted because it's rotating on its axis. So the next orbit is to the west of what the previous orbit was. So, you go through 17 orbits a day. So roughly speaking, you go over the same ground trace about 2.5 days later.
Oh.
So that's how it is.
Thanks.
Thank you. Wing Commander Ravi Shankar. Wing Commander Ravi Shankar wants to ask you a question. Ravi?
Sir, this is Wing Commander Ravi Shankar. This is my question as well as at least 4 YouTube watchers have raised this question. So instead of posting it separately, I am asking on their behalf. So do you believe there is life outside of the Earth, sir?
I don't believe, I'm sure there is. And I say that because if I may borrow Carl Sagan's words, he says that those who do not believe are really displaying the arrogance of the human species, who think that they are the only intelligent people in this vast universe. And now we come to know that there are many more universes than we thought there was. So to end up with the belief that we are the only intelligent human beings. I mean, only intelligence in this vast universe is really our innate arrogance. Have I answered your question, sir?
Thank you, sir.
Any
Yes,
more
absolutely,
questions?
sir. Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, any more questions from anyone? I have nothing left in the chat box. And
Sir, could I ask a question?
yeah, your name, please.
My name is, I am from class 10. I study in class 10. I just have, so firstly, I thank everyone. I sincerely thank everyone for your contributions towards the country. Sir Rakesh, sir, I just like to ask two questions from you. I joined a bit late, so I just wanted to know what's the core difference between our ISRO and NASA. Like, what does NASA do different from ISRO, and what does ISRO do different from NASA? Just the core things that we do differently as different space organizations as a whole.
Well, I would say that ISRO is a public sector company, and I think it's the only public sector company that is delivering. Whereas NASA is business driven. It is, in a way, it's private sector company, although it's under the aegis of the government. But NASA's priorities will always, like the military aviation, similarly space exploration, it is to give business to the business houses and leverage what the business houses can provide for the national effort. Whereas ISRO is functional today only because there are no bureaucratic layers and filters. The chairman ISRO reports to the minister. And that is why I think it is the more successful public sector company. So ISRO is government driven, whereas NASA is government controlled, but it is business driven. That is my understanding, and that's the difference.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I just have one more question for you. So, in your opinion, do ISRO as a whole, or do the whole space organizations as a whole in the world, do you think they're going in the correct direction for space exploration? As in, are they searching for the right place? Like, are we doing the correct thing by researching more into Mars and not the other planets?
Well, we don't know yet. And I say this primarily because ISRO has not brought out a white paper. ISRO has not shared its vision for the next 20 years or so. So we don't really know whether we are going to continue in the socio-economic benefit path, in the fact that whatever work ISRO is going to be doing in future, will it be only for our country, or will it expand to the region so that it contributes to world peace, if indeed that is what everybody wants. These were the questions which I had raised during the talk itself. So these are still early days. I don't think ISRO has declared its 2030 vision, and that is because it's controlled by the government. And I think governments, like everywhere else, are more bothered about how they fare in the next election, and they don't really have a long-term vision, you know.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for answering my question.
So there's a question from another viewer on YouTube. His name is Manikandan Dandapani. He says, travel to space challenges your nutrition. What are the kind of food habits you followed before and after your space travel?
Well, the longer the space travel gets, the more alarming will be the solutions. Like, they're already working on filtering the urine so that you can drink it. So I don't know. You will obviously need to. You cannot carry so much of food to sustain you on very long duration flights. So you will have to grow it on board, and all those experiments have been done already in the International Space Station, and also by the Russians, because the International Space Station has spent a lot of time in near Earth orbit. testing these velocities. And ultimately, that's how it'll be. Nutrition will have to be grown by you during the flight, during these long duration flights. And well, there is talk about using cryo technologies so that you don't age during the transit. And when that happens, obviously nutritional needs will come down. So let's see where this is going. I would not like to speculate too much on specifics because I don't really know. I'm not a fiction writer.
But sir, before your flight and after your space flight, were there any specific changes to your food habits before you know, went on the mission and after you landed back? Was there any change in your food habits part of the training?
Let me answer it this way. We could choose from 70 dishes which were on board the laboratory. And I carried with me only 2 items developed by the Defense Food Research Laboratory. Okay? And I never got up hungry from the table. So, in other words, in space, when I was in space. So, one could easily adapt to breads, rice. The southern republics of the then Soviet Union had cuisine like pilafs and all, like good palau, cooked differently. And of course, non-vegetarian stuff, cheese, milk products. I mean, it's quite an array, and nutritional needs are well taken care of.
Right, sir. So one more question from another YouTube viewer, Siddharth Panda. How difficult was it for you to get used to gravity in Earth after your space flight mission? And is there a sudden change from zero gravity to positive gravity?
Yeah, it is well, it's not as dramatic as during launch because during launch, you are constantly being thrusted. So you are under the G forces are acting on you. And once you reach orbit, the engines cut off and you're in an environment where there is no gravity. So you go from positive gravity to zero in an instant. Whereas on the return, it's a ballistic return. So what happens is that you turn around in the orbit, established orbit, and then you fire your retroburn in a direction which is opposite to your direction of flight. So that, instead of accelerating you, slows you down sufficiently so that the Earth's gravity starts pulling you. So essentially, it's a ballistic return. So it kind of builds up. Now the G-forces build up gradually. There is no propulsive system which is bringing you back. It is the lack of velocity so that the gravity starts pulling you. And as you come closer and closer to the Earth, you encounter denser and denser layers of the atmosphere, which further slows you down. So it's a gradual process. And you then come down under a parachute. You still haven't felt gravity till you get out and start trying to get up and walk, and with muscles which you have not used for 8 days, and for longer duration missions even longer. So it takes a while to start feeling normal again. Typically, it takes about a day to day and a half to adapt to Zeus gravity, and about the same time to readapt to Earth's gravity. And the time is because your cardiovascular system has to maintain the new normal, and upon return, the original normal.
Right, sir. Question for you from Jitin. He's again on watching the show on YouTube. He wants to know, what is your advice to the students who are interested in aerospace sector?
Well, I think the first advice is not to go for the highest paying job, because I think we are losing our best brains to the highest bidders. So I think you have to make up your mind whether your idea of success is to be a part of a team which is doing cutting edge work. Would you be happier to rub shoulders with the best of the best? Or would you be happier to have a huge bank balance and the latest car and a corner office. So that's the choice which youngsters will have to make for themselves, because the idea of success is different to different people.
Thank you, sir. I think that does finish us off.
Sir, I have a question, if you can permit me.
Your name, please.
Sir, my name is Hari Nandan Singh. I've done my 12th from Gaganyan school. Actually, I'm from Uttar Pradesh, and I'm in college at Sri City in Andhra Pradesh. So I feel very privileged when I speak to such person. Like I used to read about him in my school days. So I have a question. Like there was some strange floating object in Greater Noida in Uttar Pradesh study. So local people thought that there was some alien, and there were lots of anxiety among them. So, sir, what are your thoughts about aliens? Do they exist?
Hari, I have answered that question. And I think it is because of the times that we live, we are presupposing that alien intelligences will come to take advantage of us. It all depends. And I think if societies have developed technologies to reach us from far off areas, those societies would also be a lot more evolved than we are. We are responding with fear because we have lived in conflict and fear because of our inaction to improve our societies. And to presuppose that all intelligences, wherever they may be, are trapped in the same inaction is, I think, is not very correct. Maybe those are evolved societies and they don't come. I don't know whether you read the author called Eric von Däniken, and he had some very interesting questions. He said, was God an astronaut? In other words, who we think today is God, could it be an alien who is coming to help out and speed up our societal development process so that there is peace, long peace. You cannot have development without peace. And these are all contraindicated. So to presuppose that an alien intelligence will come only to subjugate you, I think is unnecessarily being fearful.
Right, sir.
Thank you, sir.
9 people who are coming to.
There's a question for you from Saurabh Mishra. Did you get a chance to communicate with your family on Earth when you were in space? And if yes, how was the experience?
Yeah, it was like being live on Facebook, because when I spoke to my family, there were about 20,000 people tuned in on that television. So it was, the fact that one could get through was good enough, but there was no privacy as it is there nowadays on International Space Station. So everything in my flight was really out there to garner not eyeballs, but political capital.
So one more question from YouTube viewer. Name is Srihari Sri Kumar. What is your opinion about the representation of space field through movies? Are they doing it right?
Well, they're doing it very well in the sense that otherwise movies like Gravity and others of that genre wouldn't have made millions of dollars. So it is a subject which captivates all of us, and I think it will continue. And I would, although a lot of that work is based on science fiction, but we all know that yesterday's science fiction has become today's reality. So I see no reason why today's reality, today's science fiction cannot become tomorrow's reality.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I think we are finally finished with no more questions in the chat box. And if any of our members have any more questions, kindly you can ask them or raise your hand. Well, Varta sir, it's back to you now.
Thank you. Shobha has a question.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, Shobha. Hi.
Thank you so much for talk that has jump-started us to think about the future that we are bequeathing to our grandchildren, and also an opportunity to perhaps course correct. My question is a little long. The in 2019, when Trump announced Space Command, it raised alarm bells in my head, but nobody in the world seemed to bother. And there was no contesting about it. And going back on the history of technology, antibiotics, when they were discovered, Alexander Fleming himself warned about a monster that he's creating. And today we have antibiotic resistance organisms in plenty. We don't know how to fight it. Likewise, atomic energy was supposed to cause economic benefits with its technology, with fuel and other things. Then we had an atom bomb which killed millions of people in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Now we are talking about space command, battle stations in space, weapons in space, and nobody in the world seems to be saying a choo or a cha. Now my question is, you astronauts who have seen the good and the bad and who can visualize these things, have you got a consortium or something where you could advise these governments, and maybe we can piggyback on your expertise? You see, if I start a consortium to say it is not, I'll be just a mere activist. But if you have a consortium which objects to these things and we all piggyback on you, maybe we can have a people's movement which can stop this war in space, weapons in space, weapons at space. I mean, we all start off with excellent intentions of, technology benefiting the mankind, economics and everything. Ultimately, it ends in weapons, and then we just demolish ourselves. At least in space, we can prevent this from happening at the budding stage, which perhaps is now. And we can course correct, and maybe we can give a better future for our children, actually.
Of course, I think it's a great thought. Let me just share some of my views on this. For example, it isn't as if I have not, shall I say, tested these ideas which I've shared with you. I have. I am, in fact, a part of the Association of Space Explorers. Everybody who's been into space, we formed an association. I find that I'm in a very, very small minority of somebody who is not in his country's space outfit. I'm not a part of ISRO, so I'm out of the decision-making loop within ISRO. I am also not, there isn't an aerospace industry in our country. Most of the astronauts and most of the cosmonauts are of course continuing to work for the Russian government now, whereas all Western Hemisphere astronauts, they're all working for private companies. And so they have private agendas as dictated by the board of their private companies. So I'm in as much of a minority as you are to get a global consensus going. I have failed to get any kind of traction with my own Association of Space Explorers because it is perceived as anti-business, and they're all part of business conglomerates, aerospace companies. So, in fact, even within my own nation, I have written various papers. I have discussed this with various chairmen, and with their help, I have reached even the highest levels in our government, only to hear what I had said earlier, that the compulsions are the next. They want to spend their time and energy on something which will get them back into office in the next election. So those are their priorities, not this kind of stuff. So I think it has to be only a people's movement. Like social unrest is giving us a way, whereas I do not endorse conflict on the streets and damage to public property, whatever. But I think we have to generate a situation, just to give you a pointer, like Greenpeace had become a political force, right, to push through the ideas about environmental protection. So similarly, I think since all of us, we are talking about our future generation and we all are stakeholders in that, we do need to, come together. But I think the solution will have to be in the political domain, or it'll have to be in the business or economic domain. And the economic business leaders feed the politicians. So really, it depends on how we leverage this to make it work. And you're right, individuals, we are no good. So we just have to come together and, well, I'll leave it there.
We'll do something. Space Kids is here. We'll get the kids also to join us, and let's do something as veterans, actually.
Yeah. So in fact, that is why my sole focus in these last 36 years have been students, IITs, IIMs, younger students before that, just to kind of let them know, because I think our generation is complicit in letting the way we are, to let the world have drift and reach where it has. So if we have not been able to prevent misuse of the atom, misuse of antibiotics, misuse of space, disarmament, well, we have failed. Let's admit it. So let's hope that the younger generation, they know that their future has been jeopardized by us and they need to fix that. And they can only fix it, in my belief, through the existing political system. So like Greenpeace, if you make it an election issue, if you can get it into the manifesto and then hold political parties accountable for not having made those changes, and not giving us a more functional society where the voices of those who are voting be heard, we will continue to be in this mess.
But this has to be a very global movement, because you control Indian government, but the American government creates Space Command and does anything that it wants. It doesn't work that way, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't work. So back to education. So if a generation is caught young and educated properly, then they're going to grow up with a different worldview of the kind of world they want to make. Then I think it will then filter down, and then they become the voters, and they will choose the kind of leaders they need to make a better world for themselves. I'm afraid I don't have any other better suggestions.
We'll all hold hands together and do this.
Yeah, let's do that.
Varta sir, one more question is coming, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Can I put that question across? This is again from a YouTube viewer, Siddharth Panda. He wants to know, sir, if anyone in India aspires to be an astronaut like you, is joining the Indian Air Force and becoming a test pilot thereafter is the only option, or we have many more ways of being an astronaut in our country?
Well, the answer is that that's the way to start. But remember that anybody who goes up into space is an astronaut. So whether you're a researcher, whether tomorrow you help in setting up societies with your skill set, in the sense a building specialist, environment control specialist, somebody who's into nutrition, who tends to grow stuff on the moon and maybe Mars later. So any kind of discipline which would be required to set up a habitation, all those disciplines will be in line to work on site. And once you go there, well, you're an astronaut. So, and as we had discussed during the talk, with artificial intelligence coming in, autonomous systems coming in, I think pilots and test pilots will soon be a thing of the past. You'll have these vehicles go autonomously, will be autonomously controlled. Let's see which way the trajectory, how it goes, how science explodes and works for all of us.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Vakta sir, it's back to you.
I just have one idea which is today social media is very powerful. Every one of us write in Facebook or Twitter or blog anything. This can against weaponization of space. I'm sure we can create a big movement in social, and it can really help. I mean, it's toppling governments. It's doing everything in social media. Why would it not do something useful actually?
It would. And in fact, that is why I said that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And I prefer to remain an optimist, because despite the churn that is going on in our country. Now, do you tell me, who would have ever thought that multi-billionaires like Buffett and Gates and Azim Premji and Tata and Nandan Nilekani are going to give away their wealth? And of course, they've got a heck of a lot, but till today, who has given away their wealth? Yeah, so there is a change happening, and I think we are in the, see, my appreciation is that we want everything, our concept of time, we want everything to happen in our lifetimes. And our lifetime is but a nanosecond in cosmic terms. So these are all evolutionary things. And I believe a revolution may trigger it, may jumpstart it, but for things to really improve, that will be evolutionary for it to stay. Otherwise, you will have just cyclic peaks and long troughs.
Vakta sir, you're muted.
When I requested Rakesh sir to speak with us, he said that he has to spread the gospel and spread the message around with his thoughts, his ideas, and his vision, which is of course the best for our mankind. In today's talk, I think we have done our bit, sir. Your gospel is being spread. There are lots of students from colleges and including some children here who are also on Zoom, who listen to you today on your vision, which actually has opened our eyes. And it's actually a window that has opened, widened our horizons to, let me say, mankind to use space. While we are very, very proud of what ISRO is doing and their vision, it's very, very nice. But I think we have to graduate to what you said. We should be citizens of planet Earth. And that's the greatest message that all of us should carry forward. Creation of the Space Command and all that is something which I think all our people who want to dominate will do it, but I'm sure goodness will, and we all share your optimism, sir, and I'm sure it will work, and mankind will spread peace on other places on Earth, and perhaps share the goodwill with people in space. Thank you very much, sir. Your talk today generated a huge amount of number of questions. I think we've almost had an hour of Q&A. That's the interest that it generated. thank you very much for being patient and talking to us. And I also saw, sir, you put in so much of time to prepare for our for the talk you gave to us. You really have honored us, and it's been a privilege to host you. Thank you very much for the message that we will carry. We will spread the good message, and we wish you, on behalf of all of us here, happy Navaratri, happy festival season ahead, and happiness and prosperity to you and the family. God bless, sir. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Vartha, for those lovely comments. And I cherish your comments. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yes. I hope you all enjoyed this talk today.
Excellent talk, sir.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir. Very nice, sir. Really enjoyed, sir.
And I think it generated a lot of interest.
Absolutely.
That's true.
And any other suggestions and questions, especially from the space kids? We will send you the recording. In fact, we'll send you the link. You must, let the children hear. And of course, some of the things they may not understand. You can explain it to the kids.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a great opportunity. Thank you so much. I mean, a wholehearted thanks. I mean, a real lifetime, I should say, opportunity this is. And the video was amazing. I think many children should watch that.
Yes. Excellent.
I saw it on YouTube. You can Google Antariksha and you will get it. Very
okay. Nice. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for that.
Ma'am, if you can send it to me also, I will host it in YouTube for all our viewers to see it.
It's Antariksha on YouTube. You just type Antariksha.
We'll find it.
I'll find it. I'll find it and send it.
Oh.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, happy festivals ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and all the very best to everybody. Good health. Stay safe. Stay home, and be only virtual.
All the best.
Thank you. Thank
you.
you.
Sir,
bye-bye, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Ravi, how many on YouTube? Where is he?
Ravi is gone.
Okay, right.
Ravi is here.
Ravi? You're muted now.
You're muted,
Yes,
man.